You are fully allowed to feel everything that arises within you, every surge of anger, every pang of fear, every tremor of sadness. But feeling something does not obligate you to act upon it. That, in truth, is a quiet and profound strength we too often overlook. We live under the impression that the presence of emotion requires our full submission, that if we are struck with fury, we must lash out. If fear appears, we must flee. If pain is inflicted, we must retaliate. The Stoics, however, offer a radically different understanding. They did not label emotion as enemy, but rather caution against our unexamined reaction to it. Emotions are indeed real and valid, but they are not laws written in stone. They are visitors, not rulers, messengers, not dictators. They arrive uninvited and often unannounced, but the choice to engage, to dwell, or to act on them always remains in your hands. The modern world has grown increasingly expressive, teaching us to share every impulse, to wear every feeling on our sleeve, and to validate every emotion by enacting it. But emotion without discernment, without structure, is a kind of inner anarchy. Left unchecked, emotional chaos begins to shape our identity until we are no longer just feeling things. We are becoming them. This reflection is not a call to suppress your emotional life. Rather, it's an invitation to reconsider the power you give to it. It is about cultivating the ability to witness your emotions without becoming entangled in them, to respond with reasoned clarity rather than to react with impulsive abandon. This ability to pause, to breathe, and to choose one's response is the very foundation of emotional mastery. Within that gap between stimulus and response lies our power, not just to act, but to become. Emotions often arrive like sudden weather patterns. A sharp comment triggers anger. An old memory awakens grief. A quiet moment stirs anxiety. And in these moments, we often give emotion full permission to enter and occupy our mind, to move the furniture of our thoughts, change the tone of our speech, and direct the course of our day. But the Stoics remind us, emotions are not our landlords. They do not own the space of our inner world. You do. The goal is not to reject emotions, but to relate to them wisely. The Stoic does not say, I will never feel anger. He says, when anger comes, I will meet it with awareness and discipline. That awareness creates a sacred pause, a chance to say, I see you, I understand you, but I will decide what happens next. We too often allow temporary emotions to harden into permanent identities. A bad morning becomes a bad day. Then a bad mood becomes a belief about who we are. But just as the weather shifts, so do emotions. They pass, unless we choose to live inside them. The Stoic does not build his house in the clouds of anger, fear, or despair. He stands grounded in what endures, principles, values, and reasoned choice. As Epictetus wisely stated, it is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. This truth applies equally to feelings. Anger alone is not destructive. It is our choice to act on it that inflicts harm. Fear is not failure, yet our habitual retreat in its presence can become one. The danger is not in feeling, but in mistaking those feelings for facts, letting them become our compass rather than our weather. And some emotions linger. Resentment can settle like dust in the corners of our heart. Guilt can echo through memory. Shame can grip tightly, refusing to let go. But even these unwelcome guests only grow when we feed them, when we revisit their stories and rehearse their pain. The Stoic path is not to fight them with force, but to stop nourishing them, to redirect our focus toward what is within our control, to choose a different interpretation, a higher response. This is not coldness. This is clarity. You are not refusing the storm's existence. You are simply choosing not to surrender your life to it. That choice, repeated daily, builds a resilient mind. There is a space, a nearly invisible yet life-defining pause, between what happens to you and what you choose to do next. In that space lies a distinction between reaction and response. Reaction is immediate, automatic, emotional. It is raw, primal, and often careless. Someone criticizes you, and you snap. You feel anxious, so you escape or numb. Reaction gives your emotions full control, placing them in the driver's seat without question or consequence. It bypasses reflection and acts on impulse. But response is intentional. It is the act of taking a breath, collecting yourself, and deciding how to proceed with purpose. It acknowledges emotion without surrendering to it. It recognizes the presence of fire, but refuses to throw gasoline. Marcus Aurelius, amidst betrayal, war, and illness, rarely reacted. He responded. His meditations are not grand declarations, but gentle reminders to himself. Do not be ruled by anger. Do not be swayed by praise. Return to what you know is good, right, and true. He trained himself daily to meet adversity not with drama, but with dignity. And we must ask ourselves, how many of our regrets are born not from deep reflection, but from rash reaction? How many relationships have been bruised by words spoken too quickly? How many opportunities have been lost because fear, masked as urgency, made our decisions for us, post before we've even processed? But what the Stoics understood is that speed often bypasses wisdom, and wisdom lives in the pause. When Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations, he was, in essence, practicing the pause on paper, reflecting, slowing down his mind, not reacting to power, stress, or flattery, but returning to principle. He was building a mind that doesn't rush to judgment, doesn't get pulled into every storm, a mind that holds stillness even under pressure. The pause doesn't need to be long. Sometimes it's just one breath, 1 second, one blink before the mouth opens, one beat before the decision is made. And in that pause, everything shifts. A hurtful word is replaced with patience. A defensive reaction becomes a question. A mistake is prevented before it's born. You don't stop the emotion, but you slow the story long enough to change its ending. Practicing the pause builds strength over time. In the beginning, it feels unnatural. Your body still wants to react. Your ego wants to protect. But slowly, as you practice, the pause becomes a habit. A moment of space that lives inside you, not because you suppress, but because you observe. You become the kind of person who is not easily moved, not easily thrown off balance. And people will feel it. Your presence changes. Your words carry weight. Your silence becomes intentional, not uncertain. Try this the next time you feel emotion rise. Don't act. Don't reply. Don't post. Just pause. Place your awareness on your breath. Count to 3. Ask yourself, what will my wisest self do here? Not the version of you that's hurt, angry, or afraid, but the version that's clear, calm, and grounded. That's who the pause reconnects you with. And don't underestimate the power of small pauses. A pause before checking your phone. A pause before saying yes to something you don't mean. A pause before walking away from something that actually matters. These micro pauses, repeated daily, reshape your life. Seneca once wrote, "Anger, an acid that does more harm to the vessel than anything it is poured upon." The pause protects a vessel. It keeps your clarity intact, your dignity untouched, your decisions aligned with who you truly want to be. So build your pause. Practice it like a sacred art, because the more you return to that space, the more your life becomes a reflection of intention, not impulse. In the heat of emotion, stillness feels unnatural. When anger flares or frustration peaks, every part you wants to move, to raise your voice, to defend, to act. Stillness feels like weakness, like doing nothing. But that's only because we've misunderstood what stillness really is. Stillness is not passive. It's not the absence of power. It's the highest expression of it. Because in the middle of chaos, stillness says, I don't need to be pulled into this. I don't need to fight every battle, prove every point, or match every storm with more noise. The Stoics saw this clearly. They knew that inner strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to be seen. It just needs to be chosen. Choosing stillness means stepping away from the instinct to explode. It means resisting the urge to win in moments that call for grace. It means understanding that an outburst might feel good for a second, but often leaves behind wreckage. Words you can't unsay. Energy you can't take back. Relationships quietly damaged, not by deep wounds, but by repeated unchecked reactions. Stillness gives you a different kind of power. Not control over others, but control over yourself. The ability to hold your ground without raising your voice. To say less and mean more. To let the other person spiral and not mirror it. That's not silence from fear. It's silence from confidence. The kind that says, I know who I am, and I don't need to prove it with noise. We're conditioned to believe that if we don't speak instantly, we'll lose control. That if we don't respond with force, we'll be disrespected. But often the opposite is true. The person who chooses stillness, especially when they have the strength to do otherwise, earns a different kind of respect. They're remembered not for how they reacted, but for how they didn't. This doesn't mean suppression. It means discernment. It means understanding that every emotion doesn't deserve expression, at least not immediately, and not in every direction. Some emotions are teachers. They ask to be listened to, not acted on. Stillness creates the space for that listening to happen. Think of stillness like a protective shell around your clarity. When life presses in, when people test you, when things go wrong, stillness holds you together. It keeps you from unraveling. It gives you time to think, to breathe, to align your response with your values, not your impulses. Try this in your next emotional moment. Don't react. Sit with it. Let it rise and let it pass. Feel it fully, but let your response come from stillness, not heat. You'll notice something powerful. The emotion doesn't last as long as you feared, and your peace lasts longer than you expected. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Be like the cliff against which the waves continually break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water." That's what stillness is. Not escape, but anchored presence. So choose stillness, especially when outburst feels easier. Especially when pride wants to speak. Especially when the world expects you to lose control. Because when you choose stillness, you don't just avoid regret. You build presence. You build power. You build peace. Words are power. Once spoken, they can't be undone. They shape relationships, influence emotions, and reveal who you are even more than your intentions do. And yet, most people speak on autopilot. They let emotion dictate tone. They let impulse choose the timing. And they forget what you say in 5 seconds of anger can echo for years. The Stoics knew the danger of speaking without thought. They weren't advocates of silence for its own sake. They were advocates of measured speech. Words are slow to rise but strong in impact. Epictetus put it simply, first learn the meaning of what you say and then speak. In other words, pause, reflect, and then choose not just what to say, but whether to speak at all. When you speak from a place of unchecked emotion, the words often come out sharper than the truth. You defend when you don't need to. You attack when you meant to express. You push away the very people you want to connect with. But when you take even a few seconds to reflect, to ask, why am I saying this? What will this actually create? You shift the energy. Your voice carries wisdom, not just feeling. Reflection doesn't mean overthinking. It means alignment. It means making sure your words serve your values, not just your momentary emotion. It means checking, is this true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Because not everything that's true needs to be said right now. And not everything you feel deserves to become someone else's burden. Think about how often conflict escalates. Not because of what was felt, but because of what was said too fast. A misunderstanding. A tone. A single phrase that cut deeper than intended. If you had paused, reflected, taken a breath, maybe it could have been different. Maybe the relationship would have grown instead of cracked. This is why reflective speech is a form of emotional discipline. You hold the space between feeling and expression. You allow clarity to rise before words are released. You speak not to win or vent, but to build, to connect, to clarify, to move forward with integrity. Try this in your next conversation. When tension rises, don't respond immediately. Let the other person finish. Count in your head. Ask yourself, what is really needed here? Reaction or understanding? Often you'll realize your original response wasn't necessary, or you'll find a better one that holds firmness without hostility, honesty without harm. Over time, this habit of reflective speech becomes a trait. People begin to trust your words more, not because you say what they want to hear, but because you speak with intention. You're not just reacting, you're choosing, and that choice builds presence. You hold the space between feeling and expression. You allow clarity to rise before words are released. You speak not to win or vent, but to build, to connect, to clarify, to move forward with integrity. Try this in your next conversation. When tension rises, don't respond immediately. Let the other person finish. Count in your head. Ask yourself, what is really needed here? Reaction or understanding? Often you'll realize your original response wasn't necessary. Or you'll find a better one that holds firmness without hostility, honesty without harm. Over time, this habit of reflective speech becomes a trait. People begin to trust your words more, not because you say what they want to hear, but because you speak with intention. You're not just reacting, you're choosing. And that choice builds presence. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly, if it's not necessary to speak, it's necessary not to speak. That wasn't silence out of fear. It was silence out of respect for others, for the moment, and for the kind of person he was trying to become. So before you speak, reflect, not forever, not to escape expression, but just long enough to ask, is what I'm about to say worthy of who I want to be? If it is, speak it with strength. If it's not, choose the higher power, silence. You are not your anger. Anger is loud. It shows up fast. It demands to be felt, to be expressed, to be obeyed. And in the moment, it feels like truth, like justice, like power. But the Stoics taught us something vital. Anger is not who you are. It's something that visits you, something that passes through you. You are not your anger. And the more you remember that, the more freedom you reclaim from it. Most people confuse anger with identity. They say, I have a temper, or that's just how I am, as if anger is a permanent trait. But it's not. Anger is a response, often a hurt to fear, the perceived disrespect or loss of control. It feels powerful, but it's often protecting something much more vulnerable beneath the surface. And if you never question it, it becomes your mask, your pattern, your prison. Anger wants speed, but you can slow it down. Anger wants reaction, but you can redirect it. Anger wants to convince you that it's the voice of truth, but often it's just a voice of pain in disguise. When you observe it instead of obeying it, you begin to see it clearly, not as a flaw to suppress, but as a signal to investigate. Ask yourself, what is this anger really about? What am I trying to protect? What fear sits underneath this reaction? Because beneath the heat, there's often a wound. And healing that wound requires awareness, not aggression. It requires listening, not lashing out. And here's the most important part. Refusing to act from anger doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise. Anyone can react. Anyone can shout. But the person who can hold that fire, study it, and choose not to let it burn everything down, that person is powerful. So the next time you feel anger rise, don't fear it. Don't feed it. Don't become it. Just see it. Name it. Hold it in your awareness like a flame in your palm. Something you respect, but do not let consume you. Because you are not your anger. You are the one who watches it and chooses something better. Calm is power. We often associate power with volume, with sharpness, with presence or dominance. But true power, the kind that lasts, is often silent. It's the person who doesn't need to raise their voice to command attention. The one who doesn't need to react to prove control. The one who carries a stillness, so grounded it settles a room without trying. That is calm. And that is power. Calm isn't the absence of emotion. It's the mastery of it. It's standing in the middle of the storm and knowing that the storm is not in you. It's being fully aware of the chaos around you, but not letting it invade your center. The Stoics revered calm not as a trait for the passive, but as a discipline for the strong. Because it's easy to explode. It's easy to get swept away. But calm, true, earned calm, requires restraint, awareness, and a deep commitment to inner peace. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth, yet he constantly reminded himself not to be upset by trivial things, not to let the external dictate the internal. Why? Because he knew that losing your calm is the fastest way to lose your clarity, your judgment, and your integrity. When you lose calm, you lose access to your best self. Calm is not just emotional, it's strategic. It lets you see clearly while others are distracted by noise. It lets you act from reason when others are driven by impulse. It gives you the patience to wait, to listen, to observe. And in that observation, you find your advantage. You don't need to compete with the world's pace. You set your own, and that makes you untouchable. But calm isn't something you turn on like a switch. It's something you cultivate through habits, through discipline, through the quiet decision, moment after moment, not to give in to the emotional pull of the moment. It's choosing silence over reaction, breath over impulse, principle over pride. And here's the paradox. The more calm you cultivate, the more influence you carry, because people feel it. They trust a person who doesn't flinch, who doesn't panic, who doesn't let emotion drive every move. That kind of presence is magnetic. It doesn't need to shout to be heard. So if you want real power, not temporary dominance, but lasting strength, build calm. Build it in your morning routine. Build it in your conversations. Build it in how you respond to challenge, to disrespect, to uncertainty. Not by suppressing what you feel, but by refusing to be owned by it. Calm is not weakness. It's not withdrawal. It's not indifference. Calm is focused. Calm is clear. Calm is a quiet, unshakable kind of strength. The kind that makes people wonder how you're so steady in a world that moves like a storm. So when in doubt, don't raise your voice. Lower your shoulders. Breathe. And remember, calm isn't a lack of feeling. It's the choice to feel without falling apart. You are not your first thought. You are not your worst reaction. You are the space between stimulus and response. And what you choose to do with that space defines everything. Emotion is natural. It will rise. It will pulse through your chest, tighten your breath, blur your vision. But it doesn't have to speak for you. It doesn't have to guide your hands, your words, your future. The Stoic path is not about being less human. It's about becoming more aware, more intentional, more in control of what you give your energy to. This was never about suppressing how you feel. It's about reclaiming your power to decide what your feelings become. Do they become wisdom or just noise? Do they lead you closer to who you want to be or further away? The choice is always yours. In every breath, in every pause, in every moment you feel a wave rise and choose not to drown in it. If this gave you clarity, strength, or even one quiet pause where before there would have been chaos, hold on to that. Build on it. Share it. And most of all, live it.